Long Jetty. It's the 25th of February 1995. Hello Beverly, I believe that you've spent really all of your life until recently in Darlington.
That's right, all of my life, and 5 generations have gone through the house where I was. My grandmother lived there, my mum lived there, then I lived there and reared my children. My mum reared her children, I reared my children, and Sue, is my daughter now, is living there with her daughter. So that's 5 generations that have lived there, and a lovely area, loved it. Yeah.
And where was your house?
It was in Calder Road, Chippendale, number 40. And it was right next to where the university has taken over the whole of the area of Darlington, where it was a beautiful suburb full of beautiful terrace houses. It's all been knocked down now for the university, which made everybody very upset at the time when it first came out they were going to do that. Very upset.
And what year were you born in?
1935.
And were you born at home or at a hospital?
No, at Crown Street Hospital and then brought home to Calder Road.
Beverly, where were you in the family? Did you have brothers and sisters?
I had a brother, he was 5 years older than me, and that was all just my brother and I.
Was that an unusually small family?
Yes, I think it was, because there were families with 6 and 7, 10 children. A good friend of mine came from a family of 10. Yeah, I think it was unusual.
Was it commented on that there were only 2 kids in your family?
No, I never heard any comment, no. Never heard any comment of it, no. No, just accepted it, I guess. Yeah.
Well, what are your earliest memories?
Well, my earliest memories are of the area, growing up with plenty of friends, no toys much. I can't remember ever having dolls or toys, anything like that, no. But always finding plenty to do and never going short of company. All the children went in and out of different people's houses. I've been in and out of every house in Calder Road. I know the outlay of them all and how many bedrooms they have and how they're outlaid, how big their yards are, everything. A lot of people have asked me, you know, like over the years, what's that place like? I might be interested in buying it. You know, I could always tell them every house. I've been in every house there and in some of them in other streets as well, but in every one in Calder Road. Very friendly area, very good neighbours who were always willing to help one another. I always found that in the area, and when I first moved to Long Jetty, so upset that practically had a nervous breakdown, I would say, only that I realised that I couldn't keep that up, you know, and kept wanting to move back, but didn't do that because my husband loved it here.
Well, if you were to describe your family, what sort of family did you come from?
Well, it was a working class family. My dad was a wharf labourer who had been to the war and had come back. He'd been to the war and fought the war, came back again, was on the wharves, and at 45 he died with TB. It was war related. So my dad wasn't around after I was 16. He died at home, like he'd gone to the hospital, but he was in the home with us for 2 years with the TB before he died. My mum nursed him and we had to boil everything on the stove that he used, and we all had to have separate things and to use, cups and things, forks and knives and that. And then he was rushed to hospital about a week before he died and died at 45 from war-related injuries.
And what year was that?
That was, I was 16. I was born in 1935.
51?
Yeah, it must have been, yeah.
Oh,
so, you know, that was sad because my mum had a big struggle looking after him at home. And, you know, with us 2 kids trying to rear us up without us, and we all had to have the needles and all that, and for years later we had the needles and the x-rays, and I always remember I went for a chest x-ray and there was a fella there, it must have been one of the first men that started to x-ray the chests for ladies, and my mother put on such a stink, she wanted a lady to do the chest x-ray on her daughter, who was only 16 or 15 at the time. Anyhow, she got away, they got a lady to do it. It always sticks out in my mind, that's why I mention it. Things like that, you know. So it was a struggle. It was a big struggle for my mum, who was sort of working on and off and trying to get a few bob to keep going, because there wasn't, you know. I remember she won £40 in the lottery, and that was a help. £40.
Well, if you were born in 35, you wouldn't remember much before the outbreak of the war.
No. See, I was young then. I don't really remember a lot about the war. But I do remember my dad getting sick after it.
And he'd been, where had he served?
Oh, well, I'm not really sure, but I know we had certificates and things. He'd been overseas, you know, he wasn't just, I think Darwin, if I remember rightly.
And so, and he came back, was he away for the whole war period? Can you remember when he went away?
I think he might have been. I think he would have been, yeah. I think so. The only way I could find that out would be looking at his certificate. And
well, can you remember how old you were when he came back? Can you remember, so if you would have been 5 in 1940, so from ages 5 to 10, was it just you and your mum at home? Was he off with the services?
And my brother.
And your brother?
Yeah. Well, it would have been, I'd say, yes, for sure. Because I do remember the after the war, which was still there, and that was the air raid shelters in Calder Road and other streets, Shepherd Street, and I remember the trenches over in the park. They had trenches dug. I remember those because these things were there a few years after the war, before they pulled them down. I suppose they thought there was going to be another war, perhaps. Not sure. Yeah. But they were still there, and I do remember playing in those.
And what can you remember of your life during the war period? Say when you're from about 5 to 10. Can you remember much of the impact of the war on you?
No, I wouldn't say I could, no. I think I was too young for that.
Right.
But I remember, going to little birthday parties with friends and things like that. But I don't think there was a great emphasis. I think it was just something that all these men just done, and there was no big deal about it. It was just, they all just went off and did it, you know. And, I think my mum worked at places on and off, and, I think it was a big struggle. But apart from that, I can't remember really too much, big deal put on about the war.
Did your mother work when you were a child? What sort of jobs did she do?
Well, when I was young growing up, I remember her working at the IXL factory. It was all mainly factory jobs or housemaid jobs in hotels and things, cleaning and making beds and things like that. That's the type of work Mum did.
And did she do that during the war years?
Yes, I think she did work on and off during the war years. But I can't remember.
Even when your father was alive, she was working?
Oh, I think when he got real sick there, she couldn't work. No. She had to stay home. She had to look after him then, because she had to, as I say, make sure everything was clean.
Did most women
big job.
Did most women in the neighbourhood work outside the home?
I think a lot of the women them days, no, I think a lot of them were at home with their children at that time, I think mainly the ones that were a bit desperate maybe done a few, a little job here and there, but I think most of them were home with their families. To my knowledge, I'd say.
Now, how would you describe your mother? What sort of a woman was she?
Oh, she was a good living lady. Very good. She wasn't much for mixing, you know, outside the home, more or less done whatever she had to do in the home. But moved down from the country when she was about 14 from Bathurst, and her and her sister, and lived down in Sydney and more or less stayed there in the old house. So she'd been there for a long time, you know, a long time in that house. But they were women that used to always get out the front and sweep their front verandas, and they always did this every morning. Everyone swept the front veranda, and she'd probably say good day to somebody, you know, doing that. But apart from that, she was mainly in the home, cooking and, you know, and looking after it, mainly things like that.
And what about your father? What sort of a man was he?
Well, he was a wharf labourer on the wharves. He was a good man, good living man, came from Bondi, a family that I think was pretty well to do in Bondi. And I always remember Mum, she said that they were married 2 years before they could tell his family that they were married. They'd kept that secret for 2 years, which I thought was unusual.
Yeah, why?
But, you know, I don't know the reason. I said, why is that? She said, oh, he didn't want no one to know. Didn't want anyone to know that he was married. Anyway, yeah, but I think they were a well-to-do family from Bondi. Maybe he thought that they'd think that she, you know, she'd coming from a different suburb. Who knows? I'm not sure. But I remember her saying that the secret was kept for 2 years. And but he was a good man. But I found in the later years a cranky sort of a man. Like if anyone came calling out to play with you, he'd sing out, "Go home to your own place," you know, something like that, yeah. So he was, maybe because he was sick, you know. But I remember he took us to the Wharfies picnic just before a few months before he died, whenever it was on. We all went to the Wharfies picnic, and I remember he was sick then, very sick, yeah. But we always liked to go to the Wharfies picnic, yeah.
Well, your family, your parents, were they religious? Were they actively involved in any church?
No, not really. My mum was a Catholic and my dad was a Church of England, but no, I can't remember them ever going to... Mum always used to say you can be good without going to church. That was her view. But her mother always went to church, my nana, and I think that might have rubbed off on me a bit because I always continued to go to church. I always went to Mass at St Benedict's every Sunday and took my children. But Mum wasn't a churchgoer, but a good, honest woman, like never owe you anything, very honest. Yeah.
And did your dad practice a religion?
His religion? No, he didn't either, no. So there were no religion, you know, really in our household that I know of.
What about politics? What sort of talk about politicians would happen in your family?
Well, Labor was always the flair of the day. I always found Labor, you know, like we grew up, and when it was time to vote, you always sort of had that idea that, you know, you vote for whoever you want, but it must be Labor. So, that, you know, that just sort of flowed on, and we were just very Labor orientated people, very Labor.
Was your dad involved in the union, the Wharfies?
Oh, he would have been, yes, I'd say he would have been in the union. I don't know that he had a special job in it, but I'd say he would have been, it definitely would have paid into the union, would have been, you know, a member.
What about any of the Communist Party organisations? Was he involved in any of that?
Not that I know of, no, never that I know of, no.
What about your mum? What about her views politically? Did she hold political opinions? And
no, she wasn't. I think they just voted Labor when it came, and that was it. You know, you never heard them talk much about politics in the house.
And no. They weren't members of the local party or hand out how to vote or any of that kind of thing?
No, they weren't into any of that. But I was as I got older. But no, Mum never, and Dad no.
Well, at home, if you were being a rat bag and not doing what you were told or whatever, what sort of discipline was used? I mean, how was the family sort of managed?
And how was...
The family managed, you know, how were
well,
the kids managed?
I think if you did anything wrong, you got a smack, good hard smack, you know. But I can't remember ever beltings or anything like that. Nothing cruel. No, only maybe a smack, a hard smack. But you knew that meant business, like you weren't to do it again. Yeah.
And were the rules pretty clear as to what a kid could do, or, you know, how did you know how did you know what you could or you couldn't do, sort of thing?
Oh, well, you sort of had a basic education from your mum and dad on right and wrong. You know, like there were right things and there were wrong things, and sometimes it might be given cheek or something like that, you'd get into trouble. Or maybe you went down to your friend's place and didn't tell them where you were and you're missing a bit longer, or you go to the shop and do a message and you're talking to meet somebody and start talking and you're not home for an hour. Well, then you'd get into trouble for doing that, you see, because they didn't know where you were, and, you know, they always like to know where you were.
Was it a safe neighbourhood?
Very safe neighbourhood, very, very safe. We used to, you could always go out and leave your key in the front door, or the key under the mat, wherever. You never heard of anyone breaking into the houses at that stage. In fact, we have never been broken into in that house in all them years, never. Even now, all the people in there have all bars on their windows. Well, I hate the bars and this security business because we haven't got them, because I've never been used to it, you know, and I don't like the look of them. I think they look dreadful. But no, it was a very safe neighbourhood. We used to, when we were teenagers, our friends would walk up from Chippendale up through Darlington, where there was plenty of people around and lovely houses, and we'd go up to the Surreyville Dance Hall, which is now the what's the name of that place up there now? Oh, it's now not the Seymour Centre, no, the I can't think of it. Wentworth Building, that's it, yes. And it's now the Wentworth Building, and we used to walk up there, go to the dance, come out, have a drink at the milk bar, and then walk back home. Now that would be 11, 12 o'clock at night, and never anyone would say anything to you and never anything to worry about. We felt very safe in that area, very safe. There were no break-ins, there were... You know, you never heard of things like that. There were gangsters around there, I can tell you. There were a few around that were seedy characters, but they never worried us. They kept to themselves.
Yeah, and who were they? I keep hearing about that, and virtually in all the areas there was the odd crim, but they seemed to pick their own company and never bothered any of the locals.
That's right. They never ever robbed around that area. Where they did rob, who knows? But it never... We always remember one fellow, he was shot to death up in Rose Street. His name was Face McEwen. We all remembered his name was Face McEwen. And he had a lovely family there, but he was a bit of a seedy character. Well, anyway, he come to that end, he got shot himself.
Well, what was he into?
Well, who knows? Probably prostitution, I'd say, would be the day then, or SP bookmaking, or... Because there were a lot of SP bookies around that area. There were a lot of the bookmaking there, like there were little places where but everyone knew where they were, everyone bar the police.
Well, but I've talked to a few SP bookies,
yeah.
And most of them seem to be ordinary family people.
Oh, they were ordinary, yeah, they were. I won't say this Face McEwen was into that, but, you know, anything that made a bob, I think these type of characters get into. But I think he'd be more like in Sly Grog and maybe prostitution, something like that. I'm not sure. I couldn't say because I'm not sure. We only heard of him, you know. But the SP bookies were real... well, they were ordinary people that lived around in the street, you know, like that we knew. And they all they done was got the few bets and you know, did a bit of bookieing and got the bit of money here and there for, you know, and they probably lost too some weeks. But they used to have their little places with the kids, you know, there'd be a kid about 14, 15 standing out the front on watch, and if the police come they'd let them know, and of course they'd get going. Yeah, but we used to, you know, go in and out at their places. I mean, they were ordinary guys, you know, ordinary people. Yeah, families.
Did you know any other characters? I mean, any... Oh.
Well, I knew of another fella that was an alcoholic, was called Bluey Woodley. Everybody knew him, and my mum was kind to him. She used to take him in, you know, sometimes bring him in and give him a meal. Yeah, so she was kind in things like that. And in fact, sometimes at the St Benedict's reunion now, which we have once a year, I meet his brother and sister-in-law and their family. And they often mention how good Mum was to Bluey. But he went back up to the country and he drowned in a pond near his mum's place. I think it was up the country, but I can't remember what area. It could have been Wagga or somewhere. Yeah.
Well, we were asking about whether it was a safe neighbourhood. So, you know, in the discipline, and so you're in trouble if you weren't home when they were expecting you, not because the neighbourhood wasn't safe, but just because it's just a bit worrying that you took so long. Is that was it?
That's right. Or you'd get into trouble because they'd be sort of, Mum would send you to the shop and maybe you'd spend a half an hour having a talk out the front and they're waiting on something for the tea table. Maybe it was something like that, you know. I'm sure plenty of times I was one for talking and I probably got into trouble a lot for that.
Were you expected to contribute to the family in any way? Like, could you get jobs? Like,
yes, well, I left school, like the one thing that I think's very sad about that area at that time was the fact that no one had a good education. Well, no one that I know of went past, you know, maybe they'd done a little bit of a certificate, some sort of certificate. But myself, I left school when I was 14 and 8 months, and my father was sick at that time, and it was a case of get out, get a job. Didn't matter what you did, you had to find a job. And then you had to bring the money home and you had to give it to Mum. Yeah.
Did you get any of it back?
Well, not really, no. Well, what would you want it for? So we had nothing to spend it on them days.
Go to the Surrey.
Huh? Oh, the Surrey, yeah. Well, the Surrey bill for the dances and things like that. Oh, you got your money back that Mum wanted, you know, whatever she wanted to give you back to go elsewhere. But no, I remember putting all my money in. Yeah. And my brother remembers it too.
And you just get a little bit back for pocket money for relaxation or something.
That's right. Oh yes, you know, you sort of, I never felt I went without anything. Never felt that I missed out on anything. Still don't. Yeah.
When you were, when you were a kid before you left school, you know, to go into the workforce, did you have to, you know, were there jobs available for girls? I know that boys often seem to do paper runs and scrounge bottles and things like that, but did girls do anything like that?
Yeah, but the boys, they started doing them things, but they usually were about 14, 13, 14. See, when I was 14, I had to look for a full-time job, you know. Like my kids done paper jobs, but they were about 13, 14 when they done the paper jobs and earned their little bit of money. You didn't let them do it any earlier than that, more or less. But when I was 14, I had to look for a permanent job and bring in home the money, see.
Well, around the house, did you help your mum by, you know, did you do housework and washing up?
Yes, I did. I did used to help a bit, yeah. Because I always remember a lady across the road, she said every time she seen me I was either shaking a mat out the front or doing something like this, or sweeping the front, or, yes, I did used to help around the house, yes. And as far as jobs, there were plenty of jobs, so it was no hassle to go and get a full-time job, because you could walk out of one job and into another. And
that was in the late 40s, wasn't it?
Yeah, and I worked, the first job I had was at Yardley's perfume factory, and I worked in the powder room, 14 and 8 months, and I was in the powder room. I don't think they'd let many people work in the powder room, and that worried my mum because my father, you know, was sick with TB at that time, and she was worried about that because I was in the powder room.
That where they manufactured talcum powder?
Talcum powder, that's right. And there was flour flying everywhere. It wasn't like they'd be doing it today, I'll bet. It was a lot different. And from there, I went to work at Allen's Sweets in the factory, scooping boiled lollies and things into bags. And I did that for years, and then I got transferred into the office. And I went into the office and worked in there, and was there for a few years. They wanted to teach me bookkeeping and all this sort of thing, but I didn't get around to that, did I? Because I got married and started to have my family. But I got a beautiful canteen and cutlery given to me from Allen's Sweets, and I still have this little note on it today, that from Allen's Sweets to Beverly Smythe. Yeah, which was my single name. So that was, you know, good times. I enjoyed the work, and most of the locals worked in these factories as well. Yeah.
When, you know, back when you were a child, in terms of helping your mum, did, in those days I get the impression that when people did their grocery shopping, it was like a thing that was done virtually. I understand that in those days when people did their shopping, like it wasn't like these days where it was about a week. Yeah, you'd do a week shop. That people almost shopped on a daily basis. Was it the kids who usually went to the shops? And
yes, it was nearly always the kids that went to the shops. You always seen the kids in the shops. Mostly it was the children, you know, the kids that done the shopping, and everything was ticked up from one week to the next. You had it on tick, like, and when they paid the bill, then immediately they started ticking up for the next week. We also had ordermen who came around, and they collected money, and if you didn't have the money that week, you'd tell him, you know, you didn't have the money, and you'd catch up next week, and that's what you did. You lived on orders and lived on tick. There were no, you know, surplus money around at all, and you'd see some people that couldn't afford to pay. They'd be peeping through the window to see if he was coming, you know, and they couldn't afford to pay, so they didn't pay him that week. But they'd probably, like all the others, catch up. I remember the order man always saying to me that the most honest people are in the poorer areas, that it's the richer areas that you can't get the money out of them. The order man always said, but the poorer people, if they don't pay this week, they catch up next week. But that's how everybody lived, was on tick, you know, everything was ticked up. There were the ordermen, the groceries that were on tick, and anywhere else you went, the butcher shop down on our corner, everybody lived ticking up their meat. So when they got their wages, all they did, and this went on to when I was rearing my children too. We always paid the bill every week and then started ticking up at the butcher shop, the grocer shop, and the orderman. And that's how you lived, you know, no one had any surplus money. Everything got paid from one week to the other, and there was nothing left. I remember even when my kids would have a birthday party, I used to go over to the shop and I'd tick up a couple of bottles of soft drink, a few lollies, you know, bag of lollies, or a couple of dollars worth of lollies, or $1 worth, and maybe a few biscuits or something to make them a little birthday party for that year, for that day, you know.
Well, in these days, we consider buying like at a corner shop or a little local shop as a pretty expensive way to go. Were there big supermarkets of that around where you could get discounted?
There were none in them days. No, there were none of those supermarkets. It was all little corner shops. So I think it's done a lot of damage to the little corner shops, you know. Well, it has, because like there used to be a shop on nearly every corner in Chippendale, and there used to be a pub on nearly every corner in Chippendale, but now, of course, they're all gone. The pubs are restaurants, the shops are houses, you know, that's all changed completely.
And were the buying locally, do you remember it as being expensive, or that was just the price and that was...
No, that was the price, and I don't think it would have been expensive in them days, because they had nothing to gain by overcharging people, you know, because they got all their business anyway, you know. So, no, I think, and in fact, we had a couple of old, well, I used to call them old maids at the time, and that run the shop. One of them had been engaged, but he got killed in the war. So they just ran this little shop, and everyone knew them, and they were lovely. They used to, you'd go in there for butter, and they'd slap the butter together with the big, like, spade things, you know, they'd have this butter.
Are they wooden sort
The
of
butter
things?
was in a box,
Oh, yes.
come in a box, and the milk was put into milk jugs. You took your milk jug and got the milk in the jug, and that's how you bought things, you know. The biscuits, you could sometimes go to some of the factories around and get broken biscuits. There were biscuit factories, like at Camperdown there was one, I remember, and sometimes people would go and get broken biscuits from there, or you could buy them perhaps in the shops, a bag of broken biscuits, cheaper than the ordinary biscuits.
And things were biscuits and that in those days, they were measured out by weight into paper bags, weren't they, rather than buying in
That's right.
packets
Yes,
like we do now.
or yes,
Is that right?
Yes, I think that's right. Or otherwise, maybe just put a few in the bag and charge you so much.
Oh yeah,
I
but
think
you
they
didn't
might
get
have
them in. You know how these days they come in the cellophane packets
Oh
with
yeah.
arnott's
Oh
written
no,
on
they were
it.
just in bags. Them days, they would just put them into bags. Yeah, most of them. But no, they were good times. You know, no one felt as if they missed out on anything. But everybody lived on tick.
Did you have a refrigerator?
Yes, we did have a refrigerator. I can't remember going back to the meat safe. I can't remember that. I think no, not a refrigerator.
So are you saying you had an ice box rather than a refrigerator?
Yeah, we didn't have a refrigerator. We had an ice box, and the iceman used to deliver the ice to put in the box. That's what we had. Yeah, I'm thinking of my time rearing the kids up, but in my time as a child, we had an ice box, and you got the blocks of ice off the iceman. You also bought the rabbits off the rabbit man, who came around right up until my children were around, because they used to come out with me till I got the rabbits, and he'd gut them and that in the back of the truck. Yeah. And his name was Sonny. I always remember his name. It was Sonny, and he came for years and years, the rabbit ale. And a lot of people around them inner city suburbs would remember Sonny, because he was a real friendly man. You know, knew everybody, and was a real good bloke. Now, what else did we have there? Oh, and we'd hear the clothes prop man. Every occasionally you'd hear the clothes prop man going up the lane, always went up the laneways, selling the clothes props.
What about the iceman? Where would the ice come from?
Well, probably the ice works, I should imagine. But
Where was that?
well, I don't know. I always thought there was an ice works down near where the fish markets is now. But whether that's, you know, that's all what I thought. Yeah.
Can you remember getting rid of the ice box and getting your first electric refrigerator?
No, I couldn't say I can actually remember that. We didn't have meat safes, you know, like I think they were back in the other era, but we had an ice box. Yeah.
When you were a child growing up, what did your family do for fun?
My children.
No, you, when you
oh,
were a
us?
child. Yeah.
Oh, us, yeah. Well, when I was growing up, we had no toys, as I said before, or dolls or things like that. Well, I didn't anyway. We used to sit out in the gutter. Sometimes we'd be shelling the peas ready for the tea. Sometimes I remember doing that in the gutter, talking to all our friends, who were all our good friends, because they were all, you know, and no one ever put anybody down or anything like that. We were all on the same level. And we all used to have great fun just telling jokes and sitting in the gutter and telling stories. I don't know, you know, what the stories even were about, because we never did anything much. But we used to go to the pictures, down to the Broadway picture show, and the Lawson picture show, which the Broadway was in George Street. The Lawson was up in Lawson Street, up in Redfern. And we done that right up until my children were coming on the scene, till television came in. We always went to the pictures at least once a week. And anyone, if any family was going, you were welcome to go along with them. If your family weren't going, so you went along with their family. So it was a great family atmosphere. You know, you never felt left out because you could just join in with the next mob and go, and enjoy the picture and that.
Did your did your family ever go out, like, you know, mum, dad, and the two children, yourself and your brother? Did you ever go out, you know, as a group to anything?
Not very much that I can remember that we ever went in a group, unless it was to visit a relative, you know. But I can't remember going out on a joyous occasion, only, as I say, the Wharfies picnic, which Dad always wanted to go and take you know, because that was on once a year. We'd done that. We might have went to Bondi a couple of times, because that's where he came from, and he liked that beach. But apart from that, I could say you could count it on one hand how many times you would go on a trip, you know, an outing.
Did you ever have holidays, family holidays?
No, never. In fact, when I got married, and our first holiday wasn't until we'd been married a few years, my mum thought it was a terrible waste of money. She didn't think you should, didn't believe in holidays because that was a terrible waste of money, because they'd never ever had a holiday, see? They never believed in that sort of thing. You never did them sort of things. But we used to go to the Surreyville, all of us young ones, all together up to the Surreyville. And apart from that, and the bigger kids used to teach us to dance in the street. Sometimes in the afternoon, they'd teach us how to dance, so that we'd be right to go to the Surreyville, you know.
Did you have
They used to teach us.
Did you have radios? What did you use for music, or did you have
we had
gramophones?
No, we had a radio. We never had a gramophone or any other music in our place, just the radio, and we used to have that on and listen to, you know, the different shows that were on.
Well, what was your favourite station or show, radio show?
I really can't remember that. But I think we used to listen to Dad and Dave and them sort of shows, you know.
In terms of music, what sort of music did you like? What was the music?
I was mad into rock and roll. I loved rock and roll, yeah. And I think that was in our day, you know, when we were about 16, was the music was rock and roll. And then the Beatles, we really loved the Beatles. Johnny O'Keefe, all that.
Well, that would have been well into your adulthood.
But that was getting older, yeah.
Can you remember when you were
rock
a kid?
And roll,
Well, can you remember when you were younger as a child, what sort of music in the 40s was really sort of dominant on the radio?
Probably the old-time dancing type of music. You heard a bit of that around, you know, and the old-fashioned songs that probably you hear sometimes today, you know. But I just can't remember the names of them. But yeah, all the old-fashioned songs. Sometimes they come on the wireless now, and you think, oh, you know, I remember that from years ago.
Okay, look, in the evening, in a typical evening, after you have your evening meal, about what? What time would you have your evening meal?
Oh, I think usually around about 5.
5? Why so early?
Well, I don't know. We still have our meal at 5, and it's only what we've been used to. Around about 5 was the time we always had our lunch, our tea. That was tea, evening meal.
And that was the main meal of the day?
Yes.
Would that have been because the men started work early and got home
I think
early?
probably it would have something to do with it, because as soon as the men came home, they wanted their meal on the table. Yeah, they seemed to want to have their dinner had to be ready. I mean, nowadays they'd be lucky. They'd have to be lucky. But them days, 5 o'clock was when you had your meal, and it was ready on the table when the men walked in.
Well, that seems that's sort of a bit funny. Well, what about they had the 6 o'clock swill at the pub? Like they were. So I had always assumed that the men would be coming home sometime after the pub's closed at 6.
I'd say they would come home, have their tea, and then maybe go and have their couple of beers. That's mainly what they do. Yeah.
So people drank in their local area rather than near where they worked?
Yeah. No, near where they lived.
So they drank near where they lived?
Yeah. Come home, because the pubs were still open till 6. So they'd come home, maybe have their tea, and then go and have a couple of beers, or I'm not sure what they...
Did your father drink?
Oh, I think he liked to. Yeah, he liked to drink. Yeah, he used to have a drink. But I think, you know, too, maybe weekends they had their drink more than like Saturday. You know, it wasn't a great event maybe every night. you know, to be more popular now. But them days, I don't think they had the money to drink, you know.
Can you remember much about the 6 o'clock closing? I've heard a lot of other people have commented about, Saturday drinking at the pub was another thing, and huge brawls, fights that would happen after, and then also people sort of spilling out of the pubs at 6 o'clock. Was that a feature of life down there? What can you remember about the pub culture? You said there were pubs on every corner. What can you remember about, you know, who went there? Like, did women go as well as men?
Yes, they did actually, yes. And my mum liked to have a drink too, and she used to go to the pub and have a drink too.
Would she drink
on a Saturday? I think she drank probably beer.
Would she be in the lounge or in the public bar?
Yes, in the lounge. The ladies drank in the lounge.
And they weren't allowed in the public bar?
No. They never were allowed in the public bar, and I always remember when that it went from 6 o'clock to 10 o'clock closing, and everybody was against it. They thought it was terrible. We're going to have all these men, they're going to be drunk and drunk longer than 6 o'clock. They're going to be there till 10 o'clock, and they thought it was terrible. Yeah, it was a big schmozzle, you know, because nobody really wanted them to bring it in from 6 or 10. They didn't want the 10 o'clock closing. Yeah.
Well, when you were growing up, what can you remember about the pubs in your area? Were they meeting places?
About the pubs, they were bits of meeting places, and I think the women, you know, my mum included, would take a peas or beans and do them in the pub, you know, sometimes.
In the daytime?
They used to do them in the, was it the parlour we said? Yeah, the ladies'
Lounge.
parlour, lounge, yeah. Ladies' parlour or lounge, it was either. They used to do them if they were down there during the day having a couple, they'd do them ready for the tea that night.
And the women would actually have a drink during the day?
Sometimes, I'm sure they did, yeah, sometimes, yeah. Because you'd see the ladies in there sometimes, yeah. Not of the night, mainly in the day, yeah. Never of a night.
And they'd do their vegetables?
Yeah, do their peas or beans while they were sitting in there, yeah. And, I think it was a great meeting place. I think a lot of the
What was the name of your local? Sorry?
Local hotel.
Yeah, what was the one?
The Native Rose was the closest one to our place.
Yeah.
As I say, it's still there today. They're doing it all back to its original state now. It's come, you know, they're doing all the woodwork and making it lovely there.
And were you saying that a lot of local, was a meeting place for locals?
Yeah, I'm sure that a lot of them went there of an afternoon, you know, and sort of, or Saturdays, and all got together. Yeah, it was a great meeting place for people. Yeah. Well, there was nothing much else, you see, for people that age group, I suppose.
Can you remember if there was any sort of, when you were a child, I guess there was the crisis of the war, but can you remember at any point in time where the community, the local people, you know, sort of galvanised around some particular issue, where something come up where the locals responded to or were upset about or tried to do something about?
I can remember one local issue, but I was a bit older at the time.
How old?
I think I had my son, who was now 40, nearly 41, John. I remember there was all sorts of talk about the university taking Darlington. Now that was one of the most traumatic things that happened in that area, because the people were petrified of where were they going to go and live, because they were all living there in rented places and that. Now all of a sudden the university's going to take them and move them somewhere else. Oh, they weren't a bit happy. And buy the houses, you know, for pittance, I suppose, or maybe even if they gave them, no, I don't think they ever give them the right amount they should have got for compensation, and that they happened to move from them houses. But that was one of the big issues that I'll never forget.
And was that in the 50s?
That was 55, 56, somewhere 55 I think, because I know I had my son, because I had him on my hip and we were all up talking about it. Everybody was out talking about what was going to happen with the university. Everyone was most upset. People were crying. We put it in the local paper. We tried to do everything. And I'm saying, get a petition up. We'll have to get a petition up. I said, you know, and I mean, I was one of the youngest, but all these old people, they didn't know what to do. They didn't know what to do.
And where would people meet? Was it in the street or at the pub?
In the street.
Or?
We were all meeting in the street and trying to, and talking about it, upset because no one wanted it, you know, no one wanted. There was Darlington. They had a Darlington town hall where a lot of the people used to get married and have their functions. There was the chemist shop up in Darlington. There was post office in Darlington. All these things that were going to go, you know, like, and eventually they went, you know, like they managed to keep an old piece of the school. That's all they managed to keep, but the rest of it's just practically gone. All except a couple of streets. You've got a bit of Darlington Road, which I walked up there yesterday, and you've got Rose Street, a bit of Rose Street, but I think eventually that'll go on. Most of Darlington Road now, as the locals die off, they put offices in there, university offices, into these beautiful terrace houses that should be getting lived in by families, you know. Look, it was the biggest shock that ever came in that area that I remember the whole time I was living there. It was the biggest thing that ever happened there because it upset everybody. Not only a few people, but everybody. No one knew. In fact, we thought they'd probably get over as far as Calder Road, and I think they might have, had people not started to kick up a big fuss after about 20 years or so. People see they're, you know, we were just taking it sort of thing, but these people coming up, get older, wouldn't take it anymore, and I think that's how the school got to be kept, because a few of the locals that had a bit of know-how, see, we lacked education, we lacked it, and we didn't know what to do. You know, that's the...
So what did you do to stop the university from doing that? I mean...
Well, we tried petitions, we got it in the paper, we tried everything, but nothing was stopping that university. Nothing. No matter what, they were going ahead with whatever they wanted to do, and nobody or no one was going to stop them. In the end, when it did go on, people were starting to say, well, the only thing is, it will, like when they knew there was no stopping them, the only thing is, maybe it'll bring a bit of work into the area. Well, it did do that, because the university opened up cafeterias. Where the Surreyville was is now a big Wentworth building and things like this. Well, that gave work to the local people. It did give a bit, and a few of the local people. But for years I said I wouldn't work there for what they've done. But eventually, after I had my children and was desperate for somewhere to just work in between school hours, I too did work there for a while, but I always said I wouldn't. But yeah, we were all so irate, but it did bring work, and that's about it. But people lost their homes for the sake of them few jobs, which I thought was disgusting. I'll never forgive the university, and even when I was, you know, down not long ago, I asked them to clean up, because they took where the beautiful old tin shed used to be, the Caroline Keane's hay and corn store. They even knocked that down and they made a park. And I wouldn't mind that, but I rang them and asked them to clean that park not too long ago, and I got fobbed off and they didn't want to know about it. I said, now, if they've made that place into parks and things, they should clean them parks. They don't even do that. They don't even clean up the parks. They let them just overrun with weeds and get filthy dirty, and the people have got to put up with that park that they can't even sit in. That upsets me too when I go down there, which I still own my house there, and that upsets me to see that at the back. I would have rather had the old hay and corn tin shed. I loved it. You know, we all used to go in there and sit on the bags of hay and corn and things that were whatever was sitting around and talk to these three old bachelors that run it, and they were real old identities, these three, and lovely old men that listened to everybody's problems, but never gave you two bob off anything, but they were good old men, you know, really good old men.
And did you go in there as a child?
Yeah, growing up as a kid, to do the messages, see, to get the potatoes. We got our potatoes and that there. Yeah.
And then when you were older?
Pumpkin, things like that. Yeah, and as we got older, we all went in there, and as our kids grew up, they knew our children as well. You know, like they got to know them, they got to know them, and
so did you buy bulk vegetables and stuff there?
Yeah, you bought vegetables, and you bought coal for your fires, you know, years ago. So we used to burn coal in the fireplaces. You know, like now they wouldn't probably allow you to do that, but we used to burn coal, wood, a bit of wood and coal, and you used to be able to buy it from there, as well as all the other seeds and things, and they even sold feed for horses and things like this. Yeah. It was a great old place.
Okay. Well, what would you say was the social focus of the neighbourhood when you were growing up, say there in the 40s? What was the social focus? And would you say you lived in Chippendale or Darlington? How would you describe it?
Well, I always said Chippendale, because I remember, I think we used to say Redfern, and then we got a letter once from the post to say that it's been changed to Chippendale, but a lot of people put Darlington. So to be honest, you don't know if it's Redfern, Chippendale or Darlington, but I always put Chippendale. But Darlington was just across the road. And, you know, but I put Chippendale because I thought that was the postal address.
So, and was there any place that was a special social focus for the area, say for kids? Was there a special place where kids hung out?
In my day?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, we used to visit each other's houses, and as I say, no, they're really... No, I don't think even... the university settlement used to be a place where you could go, but I only remember going there, like, to dances when I got to... I don't remember going there any younger than about, say, 15, and we'd go there to the university settlement, but I think the scouts and all used to accumulate there, you know, used to get together there, and I think maybe they had groups that they do, but mainly the boys would go there, I should imagine, when they were younger.
Well, what about, did you ever go over to Victoria Park and there was a swimming pool and that over there?
The swimming pool wasn't built there until young Johnny was about 40 odd years ago, so that swimming pool wasn't there when we were kids, but it came there in about 56, I think, when my son was a couple of years old or a year old, and we all then used to take our children over there. But it wasn't there for us as kids.
Well,
no.
What about for the adult? What was the social focus, or where would people get together and talk? And I'm trying
in the street, mainly in the street. Mainly people got in the street, or on a friend of mine, Edie, her mum's house was in Boundary Street. A lot of people used to get on the front veranda there and meet. Yeah, a lot of people got there, you know, and met and sat and knitted and talked and played a bit of music. A lot of people got there on that veranda. That was in Boundary Street, number 23. Yeah. But there were places like that where people would go. Like, I remember some of them, I think, played cards in different people's houses, but I didn't. I was only a child. But a lot of them, they used to get these things together for the older ones, but there was nothing much for the kids, really nothing. But I find the friendships that I made in that area are going on with me today, because all my good friends are friends today. I keep in touch with all these people, and you know, they're my only friends. I seem to be able to communicate better with these sort of people than I ever would with anyone, because everyone that I grew up with I still keep in touch with, apart from ones that of course have passed away, you know, which is sad, but we've always gone to their funerals and things. You know, like, we keep in touch with these people. They're all our friends that we've grown up with, and they'll always be my friends. And I even play tennis with the groups up here, that friends that come from that area, girls I grew up in the same street or around the corner, and we all play tennis up here at Long Jetty. And I think that's what kept me a bit sane, was getting together with these people, these friends of mine from the other era, when I first moved up here, because I was on the verge of a breakdown, I reckon, for the first time in my life. But I settled down to it.
going back again, taking you back to the 1940s again. Was the Native Rose the local pub for the men, or were there other places that the men liked to meet at?
Well, there were lots of pubs, you know. Some liked the Native Rose, some might have liked the Glengarry that was up on the corner of Lawson Street and Abercrombie Street. Some might have liked the Britannia that was on the corner of Boundary Street and Cleveland Street. But I think my mum, if she had a beer, and my dad mainly went to the Native Rose. It was the closest. And as we got older, my husband, he had a beer there at the Native Rose. They, you know, their friends used to go to the Native Rose.
And would they basically have those pubs that the locals working in them? Would it be mostly locals working in them? Would the barmaid be one of the locals, and would you know the publican?
Oh yes, they knew they all knew the publican. Yes, because I remember there was a hotel on the corner of Ivy Street and Rose Street, and it was called the Darlington Hotel, and her name was Mrs. Robertson. The woman was the publican at the time that I remember my mum going there. That's right, that was another hotel where they used to go and have a beer, was the Darlington on the corner, because that was closer again. I forgot about that because it's been pulled down for years. But that was on the corner of, as I say, Rose Street and Ivy Street, and that was the closest hotel too. But there was that one, as well. And then there was another one up on the next corner, on the corner of City Road and Ivy Street. They all knew the publicans and probably knew all the barmaids. I suppose they would be locals. Yeah, I think most of the time they were, because sometimes, if you were looking for mum, or dad or anybody, that liked to go there and just have a little beer, you sort of got to know who was sort of going in and out of there, Yeah, so, no, it was a great area, great.
Can you describe your mother's working day?
Working day?
Yeah. What time would your mum get up?
Probably 6, I should imagine, 5 or 6 or something. 6, I'd say, yeah. And get Dad off to work.
What would that mean? I mean, did he have a cooked breakfast, or would he have cereal, or what? Can you remember?
No, I think probably toast or something, I can't really remember, I think I'd be telling a fib if I said for definite, but no, I'm not real sure, but probably toast or something easy, maybe bacon and eggs. I'm really not sure,
I'm trying to get an idea of how, what did a woman, I mean, a lot of people say that their mum, my mum never worked, she stayed at home, but then when you start asking them what she did, because there weren't so many labour-saving devices.
That's right,
So can you go through what you think your mum might have
Well, by
done?
the time, they'd get breakfast over and get the husband off and get the kids off to school, right? And then I'd say they'd get into the washing, which meant boiling up the copper.
Was that done every day or only one day a week?
Well, probably a couple of times a week, I'd say, for Mum, yeah, probably a couple of times a week. They'd boil up the copper, wash probably the necks of the shirts and then put them into the copper, and boil them up. And then they've got to get them out with the prop thing that they get them out. They pull them out with a big wooden stick and into the and rinse them. And then, I suppose with the washing and the ironing, see, I even remember the irons that they used to heat up on the stove. See, they all took much longer than the electric things you plug in today. And, washing, ironing and cooking and preparing meals and things. And then she'd have to have the tea ready for, when they come home, when they're coming home. And then have the tea ready, and then if they're going to have a bath or anything overnight, so you had to light up the chip heater. Nothing was easy, you had the wood and the paper, and you'd have this chip heater to light up, and the thing would be going woof, 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 like Oh, you've no idea. And I mean, you know, that was in a little tiny bathroom where you could have blew it up, I reckon. Easy, because I used to try it when I started to do it. I'd try and get it that hot. But I don't think you really bathed every day. I must be honest. I think it was every second or third, because you went to that much trouble lighting this, you know, chip eater, that you didn't do it every day. Yeah.
Jetty, 24th, 25th of February 1995. Beverly, thinking back about your family life, you know, when your father was alive and everything, can you remember who controlled the finances?
Oh, I think probably my mother, but I'm not 100%, you know, maybe I never sort of was in a position to know sort of what was going on there with the money. But I think he worked and probably put in his share and probably kept a bit to himself. I'd say that's what happened. You know, he would have kept a bit of his own money and gave her so much to run the household. But I'm sure she always had the bigger amount of the money. Yeah.
At that time, you know, when you were growing up in the 40s, can you remember what sort of variety there was available in terms of fruit and veg?
Oh, there was mainly only peas, beans, carrots, potatoes, pumpkin. You never heard of lots of the vegetables they've got today, you know. Yeah, well, sweet potato, chocos, I'd say. But apart from that, I can't think of, a lot of them that are out today you never ever seen in them days.
And were things like oranges and apples, were they around, and lettuce and tomatoes, were they around all year round?
I don't know about all year round, but those things were around, fruit and veg, and I don't know about all the time.
These things now you can get those things, 12 months of the year.
Yeah,
so I'm just sort of wondering if that's always...
maybe not, maybe not them days.
Yeah. Were there a lot of kids in the neighbourhood?
Yes, a lot of children in the neighbourhood, lot around about our own ages, that you never were lonely because there were all heaps of kids to play with. Heaps of kids, much more than there is today.
Well, who were your friends?
Well, my friends were people I went to school with, people I lived around. There were more or less no outside of the area friends. They were all in the area of Chippendale, and they're all still my friends today. I'm still friends with all those people today. Can you name some of the people? Yes, I can name Edie Moon, Laurie Hanlon, Gloria and Mavis Darwin, Ruth Edwards, Russell Vernon, oh God, you could go on and on. Collie Crook. I don't want to leave anyone out. They might get upset with me. Look, just too numerous to mention. There's Betty Moles and her husband Seth Moles. There are just so many people, that I just didn't expect that question, or I'd have them all written down. But, numerous amounts of people, that I keep. Joan Dargues, another girl that rang me up today. Patsy Vernon and Dawn Christie, Thelma Lawson.
The friends you grew up with, who you played with?
Yes. You want me to name them now?
Yeah.
Well, there was the Moon family. I'll say in families because they're all our friends, There was the Hanlon family, Vernon family, all the family, the Mean family, the McKennas, the McEwens, the Darwins, the Dargues, and all these people I can get in contact with today because they're still all my friends. I still keep in contact with them. There was Eileen Carey and her husband and their kids. There were numerous. Mary Dunn, whose mother had 10 children, or 12 children I think, and then Mary had 10 children. They lived in Cleveland Street. They were a great family too. There were the Gadds, there were the Johnsons. Oh look, you could just go on and on. I hope I haven't forgotten anyone, but they're just numerous and still all my friends today.
Okay. Well, what did you do with your friends? What did you do together?
Well, we this is when I was a kid.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, we done all sorts of things. We went ice skating at the Glaciarium.
Where was that?
That was when we were kids growing up. The Glaciarium was at Central, and we went ice skating. I just thought of that now. And Luna Park, we went to Luna Park. We, went to the Surreyville Dance Hall. We had numerous things that we went to, but you couldn't always afford to go. You'd done these things once in a while because you didn't have the money, see? But, all sorts of things. And other times we just sat and talked.
Well, what about when you were younger children? You'd go to the pictures a bit.
Yeah.
Was there other things, not things that you had to pay?
The pictures, oh yeah.
Not things that you had to pay for, but
Yeah.
were there other things that the kids in the neighbourhood would just sort of do?
No, they just more or less hung around, like unless you went to those things, you just sort of got together and told stories, danced in the street, told jokes, There was a girl there that used to tell plenty of jokes. She
Can you
was
remember
really
any of them?
funny.
Can you remember any of them? The jokes?
Any of the, I can't remember the jokes, but they wouldn't be rude jokes. They were funny jokes. There were no rude jokes. They would all be funny sort of jokes, but she was a great joke teller, and her name was Patsy Vernon. And she used to have everyone in stitches, you know. We loved to all get there and sit with her because she was so funny. She was a real storyteller too, you know.
Well, you know how you hung around with the kids in the street? Well, how far did you roam?
Not very far. You didn't roam very far away from your own area. No, unless you were going in a group with the kids, the local kids. You'd go in a group to Luna Park or one of those places, but you never went on your own, and you never really went too far away unless they wanted, you know, your mum and dad wanted to know where you were. No, you never.
Before you mentioned swimming at the North Sydney pool, did you do that very often?
Well, we'd do that, you know, when we were going to Luna Park, which wouldn't be too often, might be once a month or something. Yeah, perhaps. We'd go swimming at North Sydney pool and then go into Luna Park and have a look around. Well, sometimes you mightn't even have the money to go on anything, but you could look. You know, you didn't have to pay then to get in the door. You just looked at the rides. If you didn't have the money, you might have had the money for one ride, you know. So you did that after going to the pool. And I think you paid to go into the pool, but it wasn't much.
Can you remember any adventures that you had as a kid?
Adventures, like what sort of adventures?
Well, probably doing something you weren't supposed to do.
Oh yes, I do remember something. I remember we used to go to the pictures at the Broadway or the Lawson, but if we were going to the Broadway picture show, we'd be about 14 and no one was allowed to wear lipstick at 14 them days. So we used to go into Victoria Park ladies' toilet, put the lipstick on at the ladies' toilet and then go to the pictures. And we felt very grown up because we had this lipstick on. It made such a difference. Yeah. But that was one of the things we did that our family never knew about.
And what were your favourite pictures? You'd be talking, say, in the 40s. What were the movies that stand out from that time?
Dear. Gone with the Wind, was that out in that day? Or probably them types of pictures, I don't know. Which one?
Betty Grable's pictures. Betty Grable's pictures.
Oh yeah, Betty Grable and Clark Gable and them types of shows, you know. But I just can't remember, you know. That's going back a bit.
Yeah. What games did you play? What were the games?
The games? Oh, we played Knockdown Ginger. We used to often play Knockdown Ginger. We'd all go around and knock on the door and then run for our lives. And I remember a few times we got caught by the ladies in the shop that had the shop, the two ladies that owned the shop, and they come running round to catch us to see who was doing it. And I was hiding in a little lane off the lane, and I remember her pulling us all out. We were all squashed in this tiny little lane, and they pulled us all out and were saying, "Get out here, Edie Moon, Gad, and get out here, Laurie Vernon, and get out here, you Beverly Smythe. I know you're in there, you little troublemaker, you." So we all got into trouble for that, but we often still did it. You know, we often did that. That was another thing we'd done that our mums and dads didn't know about, probably never found out, you know. But we used to go around knocking on the doors and then running away, yeah. That was a fun game.
What else?
We used to play hopscotch. I remember we used to play hopscotch, draw the hopscotch and...
Were there rhymes associated with hopscotch? Did you say, you know, some of those games, you had to say things as you hopped along?
No, you did.
Nothing
We
like
just
that?
had 1, 2, 3. It was just all laid out and we'd just all hop along, you know. No, it was pretty... And kick the tin. It was an old tobacco tin with a bit of something in it to hold it down. And we'd kick that along, you know. And play skippings with skipping ropes.
Can you remember any of the songs from skipping, the skipping songs?
No, I don't. No, because I think we just did it, you know. I don't remember singing anything to it. See, they put rhyme to everything these days. We didn't.
Jacks. Jacks.
Jacks, we played jacks. Yeah, we used to play jacks, you know.
Yeah, where'd you get the knuckles
bones from they used to get the bones out of the meat, and then we'd wash the bones and scrub them and use them to catch on our knuckles. And things like that.
Were there any places that you were not allowed to go?
Not that I can remember really main places that we weren't allowed to go. Because as I said before, it was a pretty safe area. You could more or less go, but you could only go when your mother and father said you could go, you know, because they wanted you home to do messages or do this or that. So you only went when you were allowed.
Did you ever go over and explore the old buildings at the university? Because they would have been pretty sort of interesting kind of...
The old yeah, we did used to go over to the university and go through some of them old buildings. Occasionally we would walk over there. A few of us would walk through there, you know, and then walk back. But we wouldn't go into any of the buildings. We'd only be in the grounds, you know.
Did you have much to
but
do
it was a lovely old place.
Did you have much to do with students?
No, never anything to do with the students. No, I didn't even know of them much them days.
Were there any people in the area that you had to avoid?
No, not really, no. No one that I know of that we had to avoid, no.
Okay, where did you go to school?
Well, I went to Darlington school for 1 year, and then I don't know whether it was because I didn't like it or what happened, but anyway, I finished the rest of my education at the Catholic school at St Kieran's up at the top of Abercrombie Street. St Kieran's School.
And who ran that?
The nuns. It was run by the nuns.
What order?
I think they were Mercy sisters, the Mercy.
And what was that like? What was that?
Oh, it was good, yes. I enjoyed the school was okay. I learned piano there over at, they had like a college where you went to from when you finished sixth class. You went over to, if you wanted to, you went over to first year over at this college, run by the nuns as well. And I remember learning piano there. I think I'd done it for about 12 months, that's all.
And what was the college you went to when you finished sixth class?
I didn't go to a college. When I finished at sixth class, that was it. Oh. I left school. I was 14.
Didn't you go to St Pat's in the City Business College or something?
No, I didn't go anywhere. I just, well, you know, money wasn't real right, so I went and got a job. Right. I went to work because my dad was sick at that time from TB.
Where did most of the local kids go to school?
Most of the local kids, they went to St Kieran's, St Benedict's, Darlington School, Glebe School. I think that was about it.
Was there any sort of rivalry between the kids in the Catholic schools and the state schools?
No, I never ever found it. There could have been, but I never ever found there was.
So you all mixed together in the street and playing?
Yeah, and never even mentioned, you know, the Catholics or the Protestants, as we called them, Church of England or whatever.
Now, what about sex education? Did you, I mean, not necessarily at school, but what did you know about sex as a kid?
No, never knew a thing, no.
And no,
we're never told anything at school, definitely not, and we're never told anything at home by your mum, never.
So what happened when you first menstruated?
Oh, well, I just thought that I was going to bleed to death, to be quite honest. Yeah.
What did you do?
I didn't know what to do. I was in a panic, you know. But anyhow, I ended up asking my mum in the night, and she told me what to do, you know, but it was just, was nothing out them days that you could buy at the chemist, I don't think. And it was just, you know.
Towels?
Yeah.
How long did you wait before you told your mum what was happening?
A day. One day.
Oh, and you must have been worried sick.
Didn't know what to do, didn't know what had happened. Hey, that's right. Didn't know what had happened.
You wouldn't have remembered hurting yourself or anything.
I thought I might have, I didn't know what had happened.
Yeah, pretty terrifying.
Yeah, it was terrifying, it was. That one thing that sticks out in my mind is that, because it was frightening.
You know how you were talking about when your father was very ill, and he had TB. Did he get that when he was overseas or during the war?
Well, they seemed to accept that it was war-related injuries. Yes, they did.
And
As far as I know, Mum always said it was war-related.
and you never got it?
No, never, no. And
Was
my
it-
brother never, and my mother never. But
Gee.
she took particular care to make sure that everything was boiled. That's what they had to do, boil it all. She had to boil it all up in a big pot on the stove. That was the way she kept it, was boiling this big pot of, I always remember
What was
this
in the
big
pot? What did she boil?
Well, his knife and fork, his plate, his cup, all that sort of, anything he used for eating was boiled by my mum.
Yeah, and in those days, I mean, TB was, it wasn't always, but it was often a death sentence, and it was contagious. Was there any, I don't know, problem? Was there any shunning or any, well, these days you'd probably say discrimination. But was
Well,
because
there
of
might
that?
have been, but I never ever seen any of it. But perhaps people were a bit frightened, you know. Perhaps nobody knew, I don't know, you know, I'm not sure.
But it was pretty common. Were you aware of other families that had it? 'Cause
No, I wasn't. No, I only particularly knew that my dad had it. No. Never knew of anyone else that had it at that stage. Yeah.
What were common childhood diseases at that time? What did kids get?
Childhood. Oh, measles, whooping cough, things like that, measles.
Did people get sicker with those sort of illnesses then than they do now?
Sicker?
Yeah.
Oh, no, I don't think so, no. I think they used to keep you in a dark room if you had measles or something and things like this, I don't know. No, I don't think they got sicker, no. Probably there wouldn't have been the medical things that they've got today for it, but people seem to get over these things.
Did you ever end up in hospital?
Appendicitis was another thing a lot of the young ones seem to get. A few of the young ones seem to get. No, I don't remember ever being in hospital, no.
Can you remember any deaths from that time?
Deaths? No, not from that time, I don't, no.
Just your father?
As I got older, yeah, only my dad, yeah. I was 16, of course, yeah. And then, of course, after that, there was a few others sort of dying around. There was an old lady across the road who'd reared up her, well, one of them's my good friend today, reared up her 4 grandchildren. She died. That was heartbreaking because we used to go in and out of each other's houses, and that was upsetting.
What caused her death?
I think it was old age. She was in her 80s. Oh, well, probably something, but I'm not sure what it was today. But she was pretty old and, you know, getting around sort of, you know, pretty sick looking. Yeah.
Can you remember any accidents? You know, in those days there weren't that many cars around, but with kids playing in the streets and things like that, were there many accidents that you can remember?
No, there weren't many cars around. There were hardly any cars, in fact. You hardly saw a car, and there were certainly none parked around our way much. No, I can't remember any big accidents of any kids around our way ever getting hit by a car or having an accident. No, I can't.
Bikes in those days?
Yes, we did. We nearly all had a bike, and if you didn't have a bike, you borrowed one off a friend, off one of the kids around the neighbourhood. And sometimes we used to take them over to Victoria Park and ride them around. But you never rode them around, you know, you might have rode them around the street, but you never went a long way away. Only Victoria Park was the furthest I ever remember riding on a bike.
If you were to describe the neighbourhood, look, was it residential, industrial, mixed? How would you say how would you describe the general neighbourhood?
Well, it was residential and industrial. It was mixed, you know. There were a lot of factories around. So, people, you know, there was always work for someone because they had cardboard factories that a lot of the locals worked at. There was the Allen Sweets lolly factory. There was Scanlon's lolly factory. There was Yardley's, the perfume factory. There was heaps of there was First was a big First cardboard factory. There were heaps of factories, you know. There was a bottle place where all the bottles were, and they used to transfer transfer them in trucks and things. There was a tobacco factory,
Where was
which
that?
was on the corner of Darlington Road and Calder Street. So we had a Calder Street, as well as a Calder Road, and it went up alongside of Calder Road, across Shepherd Street, and on the corner of Calder Street and Darlington Road, right opposite the Darlington School, was a tobacco factory. Big
What
tobacco
brand?
factory.
Do you know?
No, I can't remember the brand, but I remember it being there, yeah.
And most of the people that lived in the area, were they working people or were there professional people living there
Oh,
as
they're
well?
all workers. They were all working people. There were no professionals whatsoever. Now, you go down there now, it's full of professionals. But there wasn't a professional around there then. They were all like the same as us. That's why no one ever felt like they'd missed out on anything, because everybody was living the same. Everyone was the same. You never had anything, and it was no good of people robbing you because you had nothing to take. There was nothing much there, you know. We didn't have TVs or only a wireless perhaps, and old furniture and a bit of lino on the floor, a bit of wallpaper on the walls. Oh yeah, nothing much at all. Yeah. They couldn't take the chip eater and they couldn't take the old copper, so there was nothing for them to take.
What smells can you remember?
Smells. I probably remember the bit of a smell from the tobacco factory as you went past it.
Was it a nice smell or a stink?
Oh, I don't think it was too bad, you know. I didn't seem to think it was too bad, although I never smoked in my life, luckily. I think it was more luck than anything, because that was another thing they all had a go at, and some of them took it up and some didn't. We all used to have a, you know, we all used to have a little go at the cigarette when we were about 15, 16. Yeah, had a go, but never interested me. But, yeah, that's just another one of the things we did.
What sounds can you remember that you would associate with that area from the 1940s?
Sounds. Oh, gee. Oh, would have probably been the sound of Mum in the kitchen with the pots rattling or something like this. Yeah, perhaps that'd be something like that. Or, you know, shaking mats over the balconies. You know, all housework things. They'd be about the only sounds. You never heard aeroplanes or cars or, you know, you never heard anything much like that.
Now, if you were to close your eyes and just think back of that time, what image comes to your mind of Darlington or Chippendale in the 1940s? If you
What
think,
image?
Yeah.
Oh, well, what comes to my mind is a very safe area with a lovely lot of people that were really friendly. Is that the sort of thing? Yeah. You know, just a really safe area. That's the image. And a really lovely growing up in that area. You know, I'm sure I enjoyed every minute of it, because you never went short of friends. Even though I never had a sister, I always had plenty of girlfriends to, you know, hang about with or play with or whatever. You never, you know, you just, the friendliness, I think, of the area more than anything, where you could go in and out of different ones' houses, and if anyone was sick, everyone rallied around to give you a hand, you know, like, not that I was sick, or my mum, my dad was a bit, but he had us there to look after, but you never let anyone that didn't have anyone to look after them, you never left them without. You know, like there'd be people going in to make them a cup of tea and give them a bit of lunch or do all these sort of things. Everyone was willing to help each other.
Was the community there then? It sounds like it was a very strong sense of community. What was the ethnic mix? Was there were there any? Was it Anglo Aussies or after the war were you getting the European immigrants, or were there Aboriginal families there? What was the?
There were. Well, no, I can only remember. Australians there. I can only ever remember Australian families. I can't really remember any ethnic groups, and even I can't say that I can even remember. Oh yes, a couple of Aboriginal families, scattered around. There were,
Can you remember who they were?
Yes, one was Keithy Saunders, who was a friend of my husband's, and we all used to go out together. Wait a minute. Well, that was Keithy Saunders. Well, I can't remember a real lot of, but then in my son's time growing up, there was a friend of his that lived, a couple of friends of his that lived in Calder Road, and we were good friends with their mum and dad too.
And who was that?
And they were, one boy I think he's teaching now, Lester. Johnny Lester was the boy who grew up with my son, and Robert Griffin was the other boy. And they were from Aboriginal family, and lovelier people, you know, lovelier people you couldn't meet. Lovely families. I still keep in contact with the Griffins, but the Lester family moved away a lot of years ago. But I still hear from the Griffins because they moved up here near us. They're up here.
What were the most popular newspapers?
I think they were the Truth and the Telegraph. As far as I remember, it was the Truth and the Telegraph.
And did your family, your family get those papers?
Oh, I'd say they would have, yes. I think we always got the papers, yes.
Can you remember any magazines that you used to get at that time?
I don't know if the Woman's Weekly or whatever, but no, I can't remember any magazines that we ever got in our house. No.
What about comics?
Only the papers. Comics in the papers, that was it.
Can you remember any jokes? Oh, we've asked that, haven't we?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, what were the big issues of the time? In the late 40s, which is where most of your memories are coming from, can you remember if there were any big issues at that time?
Big issues?
Even on an Australia-wide basis, not necessarily locally, but, well, we had obviously World War II was one, but that was a bit earlier. Can you remember?
Yeah, it was a bit early for me, yes, but
big debates that might have been on in the media or something.
The which? What did you say?
Queen. That was the 54.
Oh, yeah, 54, yeah, that was when the Queen came out. But apart from that, the only other big issue I remember around that area was the Darlington.
Oh, yeah,
them
that was
taking
the 50s
Darlington,
too.
yeah, but that was a bit later too. And the Queen who arrived in 54, which was a big issue, everyone was thrilled, you know, that was a great big thing, yeah.
We weren't Republicans then.
No?
We weren't Republicans then.
No. I think everyone in that area was down at Cleveland Street to see her. Yeah.
What did you know of the world outside your local area?
Nothing very much, I don't think. No, nothing very much at all. You just more or less lived in the area and knew everything that was going on in the area, but, you know, nothing outside much.
Can you remember any of the politicians of the day?
No, I can't remember any of the politicians. We weren't into all that stage.
Okay. Well, what impact did the car have on your lifestyle? Oh, and on the area. You know when people started to get cars? Well, did they start to get cars in the late 40s in your area?
I think it would have been, you know, yeah, well I think, no, maybe in the 50s. I can remember cars coming to be popular. And then before you knew it, when the university took Darlington, now with the university there, you get all the cars in the world there in Chippendale. I mean, they just take up all the car spots. And even though they've only got 2 hours to park there, they come out, they rub off the chalk mark and they stay there all day. You know, I mean, my husband, when we were finished there, when we were still living there and he was on shift work, couldn't get anywhere to park, couldn't park out the front. He used to have to double park and he couldn't go to bed until we got somewhere to park for him, and you'd have to wait for hours sometimes before he could go and have a sleep after shift work because he couldn't get his car in the street.
It's lousy, isn't it?
Yeah, so it got really bad once the university took over there, you know, took Darlington. The car the car problem is dramatic around that area.
Well, how did you get around? If there weren't cars, how did you get around as a kid in the 40s?
Well, we went on buses and trams. We went on the tram and the bus. That's how we got around. We used to go down and get the tram, and it was lovely riding on the tram. We all loved it, you know. But that's how we went, bus or tram, well, mainly tram, I think. Mainly the tram, yeah. Or you walked. Mostly you walked.
Can I ask, was there any sort of social...
Or train.
Sorry. Was there any sort of social status differentiation, say, between Darlington and Chippendale, or Surrey Hills or Redfern? You know, was there... And was it... You know, it was an inner city area and it was sort of classed as underprivileged.
Yeah.
You've mentioned that before. Was it ever... were any of the areas ever considered better by the locals to be better than any other area? Was there any of that? What was the...
No, not that I can remember. No, I think everyone just felt on a par, you know. No, I
So you didn't think you were better than the Redfern mob or anything like that?
No one, no, never.
Well, was it ever...
But there were mobs called the Redfern mob, the Glebe mob.
And what were they?
Oh, they were only a group of boys or girls, girls and boys, you know, that sort of came over to our way, and we'd might go over there to Glebe. And, yeah, they were, you know, they were only a group of young teenagers that weren't doing any harm. They were called the Glebe mob, the Redfern mob.
And what would you do if you went
Chippendale
over to somebody else's area? Like if you went over, if the Chippendale mob...
Oh yeah, well you'd go and have a milkshake with them or something like
right.
that. Yeah, there's no fighting or that, unless you know, maybe the boys thought that they were trying to pinch each other's girlfriends or something like that. Then you might get a little scuffle with a little fist fight on it. But apart from that, no, they were all friends.
Was there ever a time when you felt, perhaps when you were older, that people looked down upon you because you came from Chippendale?
No, I never ever, no, I've always been very proud of Chippendale and living in Chippendale and growing up there. I'm more than proud of being there. But I have heard of people that say they live in other addresses. But that's something I would never ever do because I loved it. I was very happy there. I had a happy childhood there and growing up there, and I couldn't knock it, the place. I loved it.
Okay. Thank you very much. Is there anything you...
I became a Justice of the Peace because the people had nowhere to go to have their papers signed and things. They used to have to go up to the courthouse or somewhere like that. So I became a Justice of the Peace so that I could sign them for them and they'd come to my place and have them signed. And then in 77 I ran for council as an independent and became an independent on the council. And had a great run there for 7 years, and they amalgamated into the from South Sydney into the city, and really enjoyed doing it. And when my husband had the accident, I sort of phased it out because I didn't have time to do the whole thing, and so I didn't run the next time. But you know, just and I love being on it and helping the people, and I had plenty knocking on my door, I can tell you. Yeah, but apart from that, that's all, Sue. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, love.
This?
You finished with this, Sue,
Keep going.
Keep going.
Maybe rearrange those small animals again.
I've run out of water. That's right.
That's right.
That's not a little goldfish. There's 4 goldfish in there.
Well, not together. Oh, no. Separate. Yeah. What I'll try and do is I'll put my and I can try and do some on the Sunday as well. I can do 4 on a weekend.
Yeah, that's right.
No, I mean, but I would come up to the area the night. Yeah, well, David's going to the motoring ride to Herald today, and I'm hoping to find I have to get an old Volvo.
I live down there at 7 o'clock. I live down there at 7 o'clock. I'll do that halfway.
Well, I reckon I can pass night. You should be able to do it in that time, but, you know. Oh, look, every time somebody different with it, they say,
Well, that one you don't have to see because that one's here.